Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Friday Facebook Live. I'm Rip Esselstyn. It is Friday, August 4th, 2023. And we have a wonderful guest today, Dr. Laurie Marbas. Laurie, hello to you.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm excited. I was dancing to your intro song. That was
I
great.
know. It gets me all jazzed up. And everybody in the chat, let us know where you're tuning in from. We'd love to know, and let us know what the temperature is where you are. So, Laurie, before we jump in with you, I just want to let everybody know that I spent almost the whole month of July at the Esselstyn family farm with my parents, Ann and Essie, and some of my siblings, and it was absolutely dreamy. Laurie, the high temperature, I think, was 85. Almost every day, we had a little thunderstorm and some rain showers mixed into the equation. It was absolutely idyllic. And then for the last 10 days, I've been in Wisconsin and the North Shore of Lake Superior.
Wow.
And I love sharing this fact. And so I'm going to share it with you, Laurie, and everybody tuning in. So, Lake Superior, it's the largest of the Great Lakes. Okay. You have Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. And it also represents 10% of all the fresh water on planet Earth. Pretty phenomenal.
Really? Whoa.
10%. It is huge. It is over 1,300 feet deep in certain locations. And the average water temperature of Lake Superior year round is 43 degrees.
Oh.
And so the high temperatures where we were staying on the upper shore of Lake Superior in this little town called Lutzen was about 69, 70 degrees because you have this cooling effect from Lake Superior. Wow. So it was just phenomenal. And now I'm back in Austin, Texas. High today is going to be 105. And it's
my goodness.
It's just brutal. It's just brutal.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. I am too. But we took a break from our Facebook Friday Live last Friday. But the two previous ones, and this is why it's so perfect that we have Laurie here today, because we had Q&A with Ann and Essie, right? So we had two back-to-back Fridays, Q&A with Ann and Essie, and people just could not get enough of having Ann and Essie and myself kind of answer their burning questions. So I think it's absolutely apropos that today we have you, Dr. Laurie Marbas, an incredible lifestyle physician that's here to answer people's questions. So please, write in. We're going to do our best to get through as many questions as we can in the time that we have allocated here today. But Laurie you were on episode 129 of the Plan Strong podcast, which was about a year ago. And when I was talking to you then, I think you were was it Shotgun, Colorado? Where was it?
No. I was in Longmont, Colorado, but I had started my plant-based journey in Rifle, Colorado.
Oh, okay. That must be how I got Shotgun in my head.
But your dad always refers to me, Laurie from Rifle, Colorado. Like my name is always followed by Rifle, so it works.
Nice. And so where am I talking to you today?
Well, now I moved to beautiful Southern California in Orange County. I am loving it here. Oh my goodness.
And what's the temperature like there today?
Like 80.
Wow. Yeah,
it gets like average is like 68 to 72. We're only like an hour north of San Diego, an hour south of LA, 15 minutes from the ocean.
Yeah. So for people that don't know your background and know why you've chosen this path, will you please share with us in kind of a abbreviated version your journey and how you got to where you are right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on the show. First of all, I'm super excited anytime I get to talk to you. So Basically, yeah, it started. I'm a family physician, family medicine physician, and I trained in Texas at Texas Tech in West Texas, deep Texas roots. And I went into the military after that. I was in the Air Force. And after we got out of the military, I was at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. And we decided to go back to the Southwest, and we loved Colorado. So we settled in Rifle, Colorado. And I had 3 kids. They're all grown now. My daughter's actually a physician as well. And back then I had a patient back in 2012 mentioned plant-based, or excuse me, meat and dairy upset her stomach. I said, stop eating meat. I hadn't gone plant-based or even knew what that was yet. Anyway, she came back in a month, did better. Her daughter did better, pulled herself off 2 ADD meds during that 30 days and went down some rabbit holes, read the China study, and my life has never been the same. There's a really fun story how I converted the family. At that time, they were teenagers and my poor husband. But anyway, and I
Lucky,
really
your lucky husband.
there you go. That's good. That's what he says. He is. He's a very kind man. And yeah, 30 years he's put up with me, so I guess I'm lucky too. So there's that piece as well as he's been super supportive. The family's super supportive. The kids are all grown plant-based now, but I've always looked for opportunities to increase my involvement in the plant-based world, but also just share resources. So a couple of years ago, well, actually it's more than a couple, my business partner at the time, we launched plant-based telehealth. 2 years later, we sold it to John Mackey, who started Whole Foods, of course, as we know. And then I started another company. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, and there was a big announcement about that, John acquiring that recently. And so I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, and just so you know, so you have like Mona Arendt here saying, "No way are her kiddos grown. She looks fabulous." Yeah. You look like you're 28. That's incredible.
I will pay you later. No, my oldest is 29, and then I have a 27 and 25-year-old.
Wow. Okay. So you started plant-based telehealth, and then
Yes.
you keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, then because I really wanted to, dive into the insurance world. And so I had some fabulous co-founders, and we founded Mora Medical. And we really worked on that for about a year and a half. And we were in network in quite a few, about 85% in Texas, in Florida, and some in California. But we really struggled to find a good continuous source of patients willing to kind of take this journey with us. Of course, we emphasize a plant-based diet and also, utilizing lifestyle medicine principles. We had great success with the patients that we did have. But because of that, we decided to shut down recently. So hence I'm walking back into the kind of a concierge practice, a small one. I want to take patients because I am licensed in all 50 states and DC. So I can see patients from across the country. And I'm also partnering with Brittany Giroudi, who lost 70 pounds on a plant-based diet. And we're doing a thing called the Healing Kitchen. And it's only, it's a small fee a month for like $20 a month. You get to meet with us weekly, live cooking, you get recipes and live Q&A every single week. And we have so much fun. I'm cooking with her. I'm learning some great new cooking skills because she's fantastic. And then I help to answer questions and help people get better if they have any struggles.
So what's her name?
Brittany Giroudi.
Brittany Giroudi. I've never heard of her. And so,
oh, she's amazing.
So you're saying she lost 70 pounds on a whole food plant-based lifestyle.
Yes.
And then you guys somehow met each other, and now you're collaborating on this kind of program that you're doing.
Yes. So she was 8 years ago. She lost the weight. So she's young. She just turned 33. And she started a thing called the Giroudi family. So she's a great YouTube following. She literally got into the culinary aspects and doing the cooking and stuff. Is just fabulous. So actually I had her on my podcast a few years back, and that's how we originally met. And she's just delightful, just one of those people you just enjoy being around, that kind of gives you energy. So yeah, that's why wonderful. I was reached out to her. Yeah,
I look forward to meeting her. That'd be great.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll have to have her on the podcast.
Yes, you would love her. She's fabulous.
All right, great. And so you said something which you kind of said very quickly, and you kind of almost brushed over it, but you said you're licensed in all 50 states and DC, which, I have had several plant-based physicians on my podcast, but I don't, and usually they're licensed in 2 or 3, or maybe even if they're lucky, 5 states. You're in
Right.
50. That sounds like a
Yeah.
huge lift. How did you do that? You just like
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, exactly. It's interesting. So I had an opportunity where I was doing lifestyle medicine in Florida in person, and that company shut down. And so I had been reached out by a friend of mine who was working with a general telemedicine company. And so that's where I started working on getting additional licenses just for that. I thought it was going to be a short time opportunity until I found another brick and mortar type job, because that's what I was trained. The whole
Yeah.
aspect of providing care. So this was back in 2017. And I just started understanding that the more licenses I had, the more patients I could see. And then I started utilizing the lifestyle medicine, because you can't not tell someone who has diabetes about a plant-based diet. Like it just can't. I can't be
Yeah.
quiet. So that's how it started. And over the years, and then we started plant-based telehealth. And I really wanted us to be able to say we were a national company. Not that I wanted to see patients across the country, but I have seen a patient in every single state in this country, which is cool. It's really cool, actually.
That's
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 how it started.
really incredible.
Yeah.
Can I say something too? I don't know if it's your end or our
Oh,
producer's end, but I hear somebody in the background eating and walking around and stuff.
oh, it might be
Maybe
my
it's
dog. She's a little clickety
oh,
clack. Sorry,
okay,
she's
okay,
sitting
okay,
down
okay.
now.
That's okay. That's okay. Okay, good, good.
Good.
Thanks.
Sorry.
So let's dive in. Let's dive into some of these questions. And I know that you've probably heard these, a ton, but I'm going to try and pick questions too that I think everybody can benefit from. But let's start out with the typical B12 question, right? How much vitamin
Okay.
B12 do you think we should supplement if we're 100% whole food plant-based?
Yeah. So I'm taking a quote from my friend Dr. Joel Kahn. He's like, test, don't guess. We absolutely require B12 supplementation. And the majority of my patients are in the range of age of like 35 to 65. And I found that majority of people require around 500 micrograms daily after we do testing. And I'm doing B12, I'm doing a methylmalonic acid testing and homocysteine. And one other caveat to that I noticed after seeing 1,000 or so plus patients is that sometimes you'd see homocysteine elevated and their B12 and methylmalonic acid were normal. I asked them
Can I
what supplementation.
stop you for a sec?
Go ahead.
Only because you're saying that a little too fast, and I want everybody to
Oh, I'm
understand. So
sorry. I
you're
will
saying
slow down.
but you're saying B12 and then what? And then what? I know you end with homocysteine.
Yes.
What's in the middle
Yes.
there?
Methylmalonic acid,
Okay,
right? So, or MMA. So it's a metabolite in the body that's required to have B12 coupled with it to be further metabolized. And it does lots of different functions. It methyl with an additional methyl to different things.
Yep.
So the B12 that we need to understand is, as we consume B12, it goes down different pathways. So when people take a methyl B12, a lot of
Yep.
times you'll see on the kind of more the holistic plant-based B12s, they're always methyl. People think that's better than the cyanocobalamin, which is a different type of, it's a cheaper form of B12. But anyway, what happens is it shunts it down a particular pathway. And what I was noticing was some people, not all, who take that B12 had elevated homocysteine. And we do understand that with elevated homocysteine levels, you're at higher risk for stroke. So we want to keep that homocysteine below 10. So what I did was I moved them to a cyanocobalamin, and sure enough, the homocysteine dropped. So,
Wow.
it also matters what type of B12 you're taking. So the cyanocobalamin is my suggestion. Of course, some people may have some objections to that, but I think that's on an individual case and discuss that with an individual patient. But typically it's about 500 micrograms daily. And the other thing to keep in mind when you check your B12, you want to have the levels around 500 or above. And the reason I say that is, even though I think the low normal is like 250,
250 to about
many,
1100. Yeah.
yep, between that 250 and 500, people are still symptomatic. And you'll see like tingling or nerve pain, dizziness, fatigue. But when I bump them above 500, almost pretty much all of that will resolve. So if you can
Okay.
keep it above 500, it's a better.
So this is really fantastic information. So can I repeat some of this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So your recommendation is, well, test don't guess. Right. That's
Hmm.
great. And 500 micrograms mcgs a
Yep.
day. So I
Yep.
do 5,000 once a week. Is there a reason why you prefer 500 a day as opposed to maybe one a week?
A couple of reasons. I think sometimes some people don't absorb enough in a 1 mega dose. Some people do. Again, that's why I would test. And I found that it's easy to forget once a week dosing versus a daily dosing. Because if you go a couple of weeks and forget, now we've gone 14 days or 21 days, I think it's easier for people to remember just on a daily habit to take the smaller dosing. Um, it's just preference, but again, if that works for you and your levels are good and you're not symptomatic, that's perfectly fine as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a B12 that you recommend?
I have a handout. I have a few. Nature's Made is a good cheap one. I'm also looking. I have patients from all over, so and different financial requirements. So this is one that you can find in most grocery stores. I think the majority of B12s are pretty good. There's a really good website to check out if you're interested. I love this website. It's called consumerlab.com. They do independent testing on supplements and some other stuff. They write some amazing articles. And so I oftentimes will go there because what they do is they test the different supplements and say, what is actually in it? They're saying this much is in it. They're like, yes, it is. Or maybe there's some contaminants that you weren't aware of. They do even testing on food grade type of things like ground flaxseed and variety of different things. So it's a great website to check out. But
Yeah.
Nature Made seems to be very good. So like what they say is actually in it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So you said there were the two types of B12. Say
Mm-hmm.
those two names. Say those two names again.
Yeah. Well, there's a few, right? But the hydroxy and adenosine are the other types of B12. But methyl B12 is what a lot of people are taking, the methylated cobalamin. And then
Yeah.
there's the cyanocobalamin is the recommended one.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes.
And so what you said that some people may have some objections with that one. Why would that be?
Because the word cyano, right? And if you're a smoker, then thinking of cyanide. So again, these are such small amounts. It's going to be okay. But if you're a smoker, you probably want to not take the cyanocobalamin, and instead, I'd have to go back and look at the research exactly what's happening physiologically to explain that in a good lay term way. But you could take adenosine and hydroxy types of B12 together, and that would also work. And complement is a great source, a supplement that does that. If you're interested in a plant-based, another supplement, I really like the complements, folks. Those are good.
And while we're going down this path, and I don't mean to hijack this everybody, but I'd love to know, what are your thoughts on other supplementation? Like with the average patient that comes in and they have no known deficiencies, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you recommend they take as far as supplementation besides B12?
B12. Okay, yeah, B12 is my that's a non-negotiable.
Yep.
Then I test for vitamin D. Again, because it's very important for several things. It's immune function. So every cell in your immune system actually has a vitamin D receptor. And some interesting studies on COVID, severity and vitamin D deficiency. Also, some interesting research on type 1 diabetics in risk if you are low as a child. But of course, it's important for bone health. And I've had some really interesting patients who were vitamin D deficient. Everything else looked great, except they were low and had fatigue. We get their vitamin D levels above 30 and they feel better. So vitamin D is one thing we test many times. Sometimes people who live maybe in southern, Florida or California, and they're outside enough, they have plenty of vitamin D just made in their skin and their natural exposure, and that's okay because you don't want to be toxic on that dose. You can be toxic. I've had people come in on mega doses daily, and you test it, and it's really high. It's like, okay, let's pull that back. That's a fat soluble vitamin. It's not something.
Right. So it's fat soluble, means your body can
Yes.
store it. But what is,
Yeah.
so when you see somebody that is vitamin D, let's say, toxic, how does
Yeah.
that present?
Present. Yeah, so they can have a few different ones. Sometimes it's nausea, again, fatigue, joint and muscle aches is ones I've seen. And if you have a diagnosis of sarcoidosis, you should not be supplementing with vitamin D as well. So because it's a really interesting thing that happens with the sarcoid, but that's a side conversation. But a lot of doctors don't even know that. But again, just from experience,
Wow.
but sarcoidosis, but the vitamin D, I would say, be the next one. And there's some really interesting newer research that I was made aware
Wait,
of on the. Go ahead.
can I stop? I'm gonna, I'm gonna, I know you're on a roll, but I want to go back to
Yeah.
vitamin D. I don't feel like I'm done with that quite yet. So,
Okay.
so you said your magic number, you like to see people over
It's
30, over
Yeah.
30. So what
Yeah.
about, what if I got tested and I was 21? Would you want to put me
Okay.
on a supplement of vitamin D, and how much?
Yeah. I would probably start you at 2,000 IUs daily, international units daily, of vitamin
Yeah.
D3. And most people will do pretty well with there. What's interesting, I am light skinned, so you would think I would make vitamin D fairly well in the sun, because typically those with more melanin or darker skin folks will have a higher risk of being vitamin D deficient. But I was living in Florida, outside running every day, and I could not get above 30 for the save my life. And so I started taking 2,000. I still couldn't get above. So I actually have to take personally 4,000 I use daily, which is okay. Most people, I wouldn't recommend taking over 5,000 if there's a deficiency. But I check mine and mine hits 40. It doesn't matter. I have to take
Wow.
4,000 daily. So that's how that is like, I can't get in the 30s, but I can hit
So
40.
4,000, are you taking 2 horse pills, or what are you doing to get to?
No, they come in little tiny little capsules.
Really?
So yeah, they're tiny.
Uh,
I'm not a big fan of big pills, but
little innocent, little itty bitty pills. Adorable.
that's kind of
Okay.
important.
All right. Good. All right. Thank you for that. Okay.
Yeah.
So B12, vitamin
Mhm.
D, if you're below 30, safe to say.
Yeah. And I used to. I'm waffling a little bit on the algae omega-3s, and the reason I say that is if you're able to consume a good source of walnuts and ground flaxseed and get sufficient ALA, you're probably fine. But what's interesting though, there's no RDA for these omega-3s, right? These long chain fatty acids. So it's EPA, DHA, those things. And you could do like Quest and LabCorp, they have things like called an omega check. And when you check it, my plant-based eaters who weren't supplementing were low. Okay, so you're like, well, what are they testing? They're testing in the blood. Recently, I was made aware of some research that the DHA is actually 3 times higher than we expect, even from the blood work, because it's actually stored in the tissue. So the only way to get a true amount is by doing a biopsy. Of course, no one's going to say, here you go, take a biopsy. But it looks like the ALA, if you take sufficient quantities of these foods, would be enough to convert in the tissue. The question is, are they eating enough? So a lot of my patients, for example, are transitioning to a plant-based diet, or very concerned about the caloric density of certain foods, like the ground flaxseed and the walnut, and they literally don't take those things. So then I'm looking at what other foods can I supplement with them and make sure they're getting enough. So on occasion, especially if I have someone who has maybe some heart disease or an autoimmune disorder, especially with like rheumatoid, some people benefit from a small dose of algae omega-3s daily because they're anti-inflammatory and they do see some improvement in their symptoms. Yeah. So again, that's a individual discussion. And there's some newer research also that they might be able to test the DHA levels and see if it's enough. So I'm still on the cusp on how that's all going to be working, but I'm just trying to, I used to make more concrete recommendations for that, but as the newer research is coming out, I was like, okay, let's see what the science is and what I can actually measure and what's recommended. And yeah, and so I'm in that kind of gray zone at the moment.
Okay. Anything else? Any other supplementation you want to talk about, or are those really the 3?
Those are the main 3, but the others that might be beneficial and it depends. These are actually foods, right? But turmeric, right? So turmeric powder with black pepper. Some people, don't like the taste, or they're just like, I'm not going to get enough. So like for example, I just had a patient this morning with a history of rheumatoid arthritis, and she has a sensitive stomach, has a history of public, it maybe some gastritis. So we would put those in a capsule, right? So we do the turmeric powder, like you actually flavor your food with, in a capsule form. And that's a good way to consider taking it. Another one would be ginger powder. So if I have patients who, again, it's anti-inflammatory, but with migraines, I've had some really cool stories with patients with chronic migraines. Take the ginger, small amount in capsule form. Again, it's a palate issue. They just like, not doing the ginger powder by itself. And they have phenomenal results. And if I have women who are still menstruating or having periods, we also do daily doses of the turmeric with the black pepper, and that helps significantly with that discomfort. And so, yeah. So again, I think there's some quote unquote food as medicine options when the flavor might be a little much to do on a daily basis. So.
Okay. Got it. So guys, I am sorry I hogged that question. But Liz, thank you for kicking my brain into that arena, because I think that's important. All right, let's try this one. This is kind of a fun one, I think. And can you read it? You want me to read it out loud to everybody?
Yeah.
This is from
Yeah.
Sinead.
So
my husband started balding in his mid-20s before becoming plant-based. His father's also bald. Will my future son start balding if they are raised on a plant-based diet? Is it genetic? I'm curious.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? So that's a conversation we've actually had in this house a few times. There is a genetic tendency. Actually, comes from the mother's side a lot of times. So they're more than likely, they're a higher propensity to go balding. What's interesting, you can actually do the 23andMe genetic DNA testing, and you can actually see if you have that gene. So that's kind of interesting. So my boys have done that, and they do have a balding gene. I'm sorry, guys. But there's some interesting things you might want to consider doing is rosemary oil. You can actually apply it topically to the scalp daily. Now, it does have a strong scent, but it doesn't take much. You can add it to your shampoo, apply it daily. And it's interesting research there. And that actually might do some benefit starting early on and either delaying or hopefully stopping all. But yeah, there is some genetics. Sorry, guys. I don't know. The bald men are sexy, right?
Absolutely. It's interesting because I look at my kids, for example, and two of them have like my thick head of hair, and then our youngest daughter has this very, very thin, blonde hair, and she totally gets it from the mother's side.
Yeah. So I have three, and my two boys, I have one that has this really thick, coarse hair. That's like my husband's Filipino, like that Filipino. My daughter's got this gorgeous, curly, thick hair. I was like, wow, I would love to have that. But my middle one, he's got the finer hair. It's got a full head of hair, but it is thinner. And I'm like, you probably got that gene. So yeah, I totally get that. But that is a genetic tendency.
Okay, thank you. Here's one from Deborah. I would like to ask Dr. Marbas, yes, having a low red blood count of 36, but hemoglobin, hematocrit, and ferritin are all normal. I've been whole food plant-based through 3 years, and she's 63 years old. Any thoughts on that?
So the RBC count is just one measure, right? So when you're looking at what they call a CBC, or complete blood count, that's measuring a few different factors, and then they will break that down into like different sizes of the red blood cell, because different sizes can mean different things. So if someone is anemic, meaning they have a low hemoglobin and hematocrit, which is like the percentage of red blood cells in the blood, you will see different reasons. So like a large red blood cells mean that you're maybe potentially B12 deficient. A normal anemia, like a normal size with anemia, could be a variety of things. It's usually chronic disease related, like the kidney function is not as where it should be. And then a small red blood cell would be a lack of iron. And like I said, those mean different things. Now with the RBC, if it's normal and everything else is looking great, including ferritin, which is kind of the storehouse, gives you an idea of like, let's say someone has heavy periods and their ferritin will be low if they're also anemic, right? Because they're missing the iron. And so they'd have like a microcytic anemia. But if the RBC count is okay, is low and everything else looks okay, I wouldn't worry so much about it. That's probably just normal for you.
Got it. Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that. Here we have the beauty of autumn. Yes. Looking forward to autumn. My husband has type 2 diabetes and just tested mildly anemic. His PCP said he really needs to focus on eating lean animal proteins. Is it possible to
No.
fix this on a plant-based diet instead? Big sigh from Dr.
Oh my goodness. Yes, yes, yes. So first of all, let's go back. Let's step back, right? So number
Okay.
one, why are you anemic? What type anemia? All right. So if you have someone who's diabetic, is this again, is it go back to, is he macrocytic anemia, meaning that large red blood cell? Is this a normocytic? So there's clues in the actual lab test. And then I go back and ask, why are you anemic, right? Besides just throwing, hey, go eat some animal protein, let's determine why you are anemic. Maybe it's because you're a diabetic and you take metformin and you're not absorbing B12, or maybe you're not supplementing, and now you have anemia because you're deficient in B12. That has nothing to do with animal protein, right? So if you are truly iron deficient anemia and someone's saying, hey, go eat some animal protein because you can get some iron sources, I would say, no, let's go back and look at some really rich plant-based sources. You know, got beans and dark green leafies and all those wonderful things. You can consume those with some high vitamin C foods. There's some debate on whether that's actually true, but it's certainly not going to hurt. That helps you absorb the iron. And then, like I said, I always go back to, why are you anemic? And if he's a man and anemic, if he has not tested his stool to make sure there's no blood there, you should be checking that, because maybe he needs a colonoscopy. You worry about like colon cancer. I'm not trying to scare you, but I'm just saying what's going on here. If he's also diabetic, he could have some renal dysfunction or kidney dysfunction, meaning the kidney is not sending out what we call EPO, which stimulates the bone to actually produce red blood cells, which would be a normocytic anemia. So again, I like to back up and look at the foundational cause. That's what I love about the plant-based diet, is we're addressing so much of that. You know, what is the actual cause of the fire? Not just like, oh, look, your forest is burning, I'm going to throw a little, water on it and have you go on your way. It's like, oh, let's actually go and put the fire out, right? So again, let's back up, have that discussion, and maybe that your doctor has. And I'm not trying to dismay anybody's doctor or speak poorly. I just want patients to take ownership of their health and ask those questions like, okay, I understand we're anemic, but why? Ask the why, because they owe you that. They owe you that, and they should be providing you that information.
Well, have you ever in your consultations made an assessment where you're like, you know what? Yeah, you do need to start eating lean amounts of animal protein.
No.
Have you? No.
No.
Right.
No.
So I think the answer here is that you should be able to resolve almost any issue you have without resorting to animal flesh that has saturated fat, dietary cholesterol, problematic animal protein.
Yes.
Let's just
Yes.
let's take a step back, like Laurie said, focus on what is
Yes.
the root causation and do it that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in worst case scenario, I would give you an iron supplement. I wouldn't say, hey, but at the same time, like I said, I would investigate, especially as a male with a lot of issues. My brain goes into my differential diagnosis of the actual cause.
Okay. Monica wants to know, what do you suggest to help with, how do you pronounce that?
Rosacea.
Rosacea. Thank
Yeah.
you. I've been strictly vegan for 12 years and whole food plant-based since 6/25.
So June 25th. Interesting. Cool. Well, first of all, congratulations on being 12 years. That's phenomenal. And rosacea is an indication of inflammation, right? Now, there may be some genetic propensities to develop rosacea, so you get some redness on the face. Some people actually have been given antibiotics in the past, either topically or orally, to address it. So it does make you think about your gut health, right? And so I would start looking into building a really robust microbiome. So I don't know what strictly vegan means in the sense what that was in your diet. If it was a lot of processed foods and you're switching to a more, whole food plant-based diet at this time, which will help with that. But there's where I would probably start is a really good probiotic for maybe 3 months. I like seed is really good. It's digested well, and I've had some really good experiences with patients while you're getting more of these prebiotic foods as well, like fermented foods like tempeh and some different things. And you're eating all the different types of fiber, your beans and your legumes and your veggies, raw and cooked. And you're really feeding that microbiome. And then I would see how you do after about 90 days. After that, then I would start looking into some other potential causes, or is this even the appropriate or right diagnosis? So I would start there, but it does tell me that your gut probably needs a little bit of help.
Okay. Laurie, I got to let you know, we got a ton of questions that are coming through here.
Okay.
So I'm going to do my best to kind of shuffle through them, send you ones that are good. But let's do our best to like really get a lot of these. So what is the difference between dietary and endogenous cholesterol and heart disease and cancer?
Whew, okay. Let's bump this quickly. So number one, cholesterol is made in your liver. Your body will make cholesterol as much as you need to create cells and different things. So your body makes it. Now that's endogenous, right? That's the ones that you're making. Now the dietary cholesterol is ones you're getting from animal products, right? So animal products are cholesterol laden. We don't get cholesterol from plants, hence why your cholesterol will drop dramatically when you switch to a whole food plant-based diet. Now, some people, there are some genetics that will have a higher risk factor, right? Because they have high cholesterol from genetics. These are a very small number. They are at a higher risk of heart disease because of the genetics. But the majority of people, if you can keep that cholesterol nice and low for a long time, right? So that's why we want younger people to be converting to a plant-based diet sooner than later, because it's that length of time that you have that higher LDL, higher total cholesterol, that puts you at higher risk for heart disease. Now, the cancer piece is interesting. Why does cancer thrive in a high cholesterol environment? Because what's cancer doing? It's growing, it's building more cells, hence it's taking up the cholesterol. A good example of this is I had a patient who had elevated cholesterol, was not placed on a statin, suddenly one day has a super low cholesterol. Something in my head's like, what's going on? Ends up having leukemia. We go searching for why that occurred because he didn't switch his diet, but he had leukemia. So it was an early diagnosis from just looking at his cholesterol. Vastly different. So that's that.
All right. Love it. Is tofu safe for men to consume on a daily basis?
Yes. Great sources of protein, calcium. Yes.
And I think it's important for people to know that I would imagine you concur with me here that we're okay with more of the unprocessed soy products, right?
Tofu, yes, tempeh. Edamame. Yeah, tempeh, tofu, edamame. You can actually online, I haven't seen it in the grocery stores, get the actual soybean cooked in cans if you want to even go to a cooked soybean. You could also do like the soy-based yogurts, unsweetened. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Wonder Liz, I'm embarrassed to ask about borderline type 2 diabetics or diabetes. Doctors are all about low carb, meat, and it gets really confusing. Best first step, this along with hot flashes is kicking my A.
Well, first of all, don't ever be embarrassed. There's never a dumb question. The only dumb question is the one that wasn't asked, right? So the really important thing to remember here is that a whole food plant-based diet is going to be your first entry point. So I would start with maybe some of Yummy Rips foods. That's a great, shelf-stable food options. But you really just want to do as much of that as you can and as quickly as you can. Because when you hit prediabetes, I've seen most of those cases reverse in 30 days. So you can do that. Now, as far as the hot flashes, this is where the soy products are really, really helpful because you're getting phytoestrogens. And remember, the soy products also decrease risk for breast cancer. They're great for your bone health, great for heart health, cholesterol. So I do personally, because I'm in that age group, and I don't have any hot flashes in that. I'm in that middle zone. I would be doing soy. I do soy daily, tempeh, edamame, something, soy milk. I'm always consuming those because they're just so good for you. So try that out. That's what I'd recommend.
Are You Loved wants to know, what would you suggest for constipation? And I'm plant-based and constipated.
It's interesting. What is the plant-based is, I've heard people utilize the word plant-based I mean, different things, but there's a lot of different reasons for constipation. You need to look at medication potential side effects. Are you staying well hydrated? Are you exercising? And different things. And if you're having still concerns, that's where I think you should speak to someone, either a GI specialist or at least your primary care doctor, first of all, because you want to make sure there's nothing else going on. Maybe you're hypothyroid, and that can also cause constipation. So there's lots of different causes of constipation. And if you're already eating plant-based fiber-rich foods, which we know helps, there's some other things it can do. But again, there's a lot of things that cause constipation and the severity.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I have had so many people that have gone through some of, my programs.
Yeah.
And when I wrote my first book, I had 72 guinea pigs that were going through. And this one woman was going to the bathroom like once every 2 weeks. And she was told by her physician that she had something called lazy bowel syndrome.
Oh my
And after
goodness.
she started eating this way, which, as we know, it's not plant-based, it's not vegan, it's whole food plant-based, where
Right.
your fiber intake is going from 16 to 25 grams a day up to 50 to 80. And that is an absolute, game changer when it comes to bowel movements. And she told me that and this was a 6-week program that I had her on, after 1 week, she started going, and she was going now once a day instead
Wow.
of once every 2 weeks. So,
Wow.
like you said, though, you see the question on plant-based, but are you truly whole food plant-based, and, getting the hordes of fiber that we recommend you get.
Right. So many different causes. Yeah.
Uh, what are some high vitamin C foods, please?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a ton. So some of my favorite that I do on a regular basis are any of the citrus, and then I love red bell peppers. So if you
Yeah.
get some bell peppers on you. So yeah, it's not too hard to find vitamin C in a lot of different foods. I'm sure you have your favorites too, Rip.
Yes, yes. And then, obviously, I mean, I do tons of fruit, tons of vegetables,
Hmm.
bell peppers. Um, I'd have to look at my list, and it's probably easy to just like, what are the top, 20 plant-based sources of vitamin C. But
Yeah,
I've
you can
never, I've
just
never,
Google it,
I've never,
honestly.
yeah, but I've never ever really like been worried about getting
Focused
enough
in.
vitamin C. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, you're not going to have a low vitamin C risk on a whole food plant-based diet. So, but my favorites are the citrus and red bell peppers that are almost on a daily basis for me.
yeah. So this question's from Debbie, and I, it's interesting
Mm,
how many times I hear people now talking about AFib, right?
mm-hmm,
Just in
mm-hmm,
general. And so she's
mm-hmm.
been recently diagnosed with AFib with a rapid heart rate. Can a plant-based diet help with this?
So, when you think about heart conditions in general, so atrial fibrillation is an electrical issue, right? So that means that something is causing that. Again, lots of different things that can be causing it. So, yes, a whole food plant-based diet can help with your overall heart health, but again, it depends on your electrical highway and the actual cause of the AFib. So, I would say yes, in the sense now it may not resolve the symptoms of AFib, but it's going to make your heart health better, if that makes sense. So, if let's say that you developed AFib from, I don't even know, there could be, like I said, so many different causes. But let's say that you have poor actual oxygen, or let's say you have oxygen deprivation of the heart, right? So the arteries that are feeding the heart aren't getting to the heart muscle, therefore feeding it. So that could be a cause. It could be after a heart attack. So lots of different things, again, could be causing it. So yes, the heart will improve overall with the whole food plant-based diet. Will it cure the AFib? That I don't know, because again, there's different causes, and there's some amazing cardiologists that are plant-based that can definitely address your particular issue. And especially, that what we call an EPA, they're a specialist in the electrical parts of the heart. So these are cardiologists that went through internal medicine, then they do cardiology, then they do another fellowship just on addressing the electrical stuff of the heart. So that would be my initial suggestion.
Yeah. No, I've had lots of cardiologists on the podcast and some of our Facebook lives, including Dr. Brian Aspel,
Mm.
and very similar answer to what you just gave. right?
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna, I think, can definitively say right now that eating whole food plant-based will get rid of your AFib, right? No, but
Mm-mm,
it can
mm-mm.
absolutely help strengthen the heart in so many different ways.
A good example of that is I've had patients with heart failure that go to a plant-based diet and see significant improvement in their actual function or pumping of the heart. So that's what we'd call ejection fraction, go
Yeah.
from, low to near normal or even normal. So again, that just speaks volumes of this way of eating allows the heart to repair itself the best it can.
Yeah, there was a gentleman that came to me probably 6 years ago. His name's Ken Lander from Costa Rica. He owns a coffee plantation there. He was
Okay.
430 pounds and had
Wow.
heart failure. His ejection fraction was 10% of what it should be.
Oh my
10%.
goodness. Oh my heavens.
And he literally like got after it, whole food plant-based, 6 to 7 to 8 servings of green leafies a day. In 2 years, he lost over 200 pounds. His
Wow.
his heart function is 100%. He's now running
Mm.
half marathons. His his cardiologist in Costa Rica wanted him to get a heart transplant. He was that bad.
Wow.
And when he went back to him after 6 months, his cardiologist, first of all, didn't recognize him. And then when he did recognize him, he said, hold on, I have to see another patient. I'll be right back. And he was sitting there going, oh God, I'm messed. I've been doing something wrong. He came back and he said, you need to tell me everything that you've been doing, because I've never seen results like this
Wow.
ever. And now his
Wow.
cardiologist is whole food plant-based.
Oh my goodness. I love those stories. I love
Yeah.
it when patients change doctors' lives. And then that alone will ripple
No,
into so many other patients in their lives. Oh, it's awesome.
exactly. And do you know Brian Aspel at all?
I know the name, but I don't know him personally. No.
Well, anyway, so same thing with Brian, right? He had a guy that came into his office. He was there for his third like bypass,
Oh
and
my
he asked
heavens.
him. He said, "So how many times have you done a third on somebody?" And he said 3 times. And he said, "Are they alive today?" And he said, "No." And
Oh
so
my
Brian
goodness.
said, somebody gave me this book the other day. You can try this. I have no idea if it'll work. It was my dad's book, Prevent and Reverse
Oh.
Heart Disease. The guy came back 6 months later, and Brian said he looked at all of his numbers, how much weight he'd lost, and he's like, "I've been doing this for a decade and I've never seen
Mm,
anything this powerful." So he said
mm.
it made him reevaluate what he was doing. And he said it took him 2 years before he had the guts to basically get out of cardiology and go into lifestyle medicine, because he said, I
Wow.
just can't deny the results.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's
Dude.
amazing.
So, what's the ideal fasting blood glucose number in the morning if
Hmm.
you're not diabetic? What do you like to
Hmm.
see?
I like to see under 100, but probably even lower than 90 is more ideal. But if you can get under 100, I'm looking pretty happy with that. So that's why I love CGMs or continuous glucose monitors. It's something that you attach to the back of your upper arm. I've worn them myself. I love data, and you can really see what food does to your blood sugar. It's just really fun to see what your body's doing. But under 100, preferably under 90. But yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, because somebody else asked the question, if their morning fasting glucose is in the high 90s, is that too high?
It tells me that you're probably edging in the wrong direction and there's probably a little bit of insulin resistance occurring. And so we want to just kind of back that train back into the station. And that's where I would start paying attention to kind of are you consuming saturated fats? And some people think, oh, I'm plant based, but they're doing like coconut oils and different things that are high in saturated fats, like the processed meats and different or plant alternative meats. So, just really start thinking and looking at what you're actually consuming and removing those type of foods, and you should see a decline. The only other time I see that is if I have someone who was a diabetic for a really long time and they've lost some function of their pancreas, meaning they don't produce enough insulin like they should. You will see someone's numbers average a little bit higher, but that's their new normal because they literally have burnt out some function of their pancreas. So yeah.
What's the highest fasting glucose you've ever seen?
um, I've seen people with blood sugars, but they're in the hospital over 1,000. Yeah,
And can
but
you be Can you be conscious with a fasting blood sugar of 1,000?
You can, but you're not in a good shape. You're pretty sick. So you're insulin, you're going to be putting on insulin in a drip. You can get all sorts of things that would require. But on people who are actually at home walking around, I've seen well into the 400s. And it's normal. What's interesting about these people, though, they get so used to having high blood sugars that you get them down into the 200s or even higher 100s, they feel low blood sugar symptoms. And I'm like, okay, you don't have low blood sugar. Your body's just not used to it. It will get better. So it's really interesting to see
So,
what people get used to.
so how do people, how can you function in some sort of a normal capacity when you have a fasting blood sugar in the 400s? Or
Because this is what people like. We are so used to living and feeling crummy. I think people don't understand what it's like to function at a high level. What I consider normal, people are like astounded. Like they're just so used to feeling horrible. It's a gradual process, right? It's kind of like you put it's being plant based and stuff, but when you put a frog in pot of water and you turn up slowly, right? The frog doesn't jump out, but if you throw a frog in a boiling water, it's going to jump out, right? So it's the same idea. You just turn this up slowly and you just get used to the heat or the not feeling well. And I'm astounded. Like in some of the medications, I've seen people come in with 20, almost 30 different medications. The side effects alone would have me passed out non-functioning, but they're living, but not living well. How about that?
So people come in with a cocktail of medications, sometimes as many as 20 to 30. And are you successful in helping wean them off their medications?
Oh, yes. Yes. That's my favorite. The first thing to do is go through the med list and say, what do you not need today? Immediately, right? Because you'll see medications like contradicting each other or causing a significant side effect. I've seen patients come in on insulin and other medications that cause the pancreas to produce more insulin, and then other medications for, trying to beat diabetes. I'm like, listen, this is what we're going to do. We're going to simplify this list, number one. We start marking things off immediately. And they're like, whew. And then we see what's left. We reevaluate and just, go down the trail that way. But it's amazing to me.
So we have many more questions, but I want to just take a break for a second. For anybody that's interested in having a consultation with you, you're seeing patients right now, and how can they find you? What's the way?
Yeah, absolutely. So they just go to drmarbas.com and it's all listed there on exactly how I can help them and if they want to become a patient or see me.
Got it. Carrie, can you throw that up there if it's not? All right. So Dorothy says, why do they say Afro-Americans should avoid soy? Have you ever heard that? I haven't heard that. Have you ever heard
I've never heard that, but you don't need to.
Okay. There you go. Easy. Thank you. In the chat here, we have it right there. See, there it is. There. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, Carrie. Yeah. Let's see. Wow. People are just saying that this is such great information. Thank you. Look at this comment. Thanks for the great info. It's sad because my brother, uncles, and dad all had open heart surgery. Docs have them more scared to eat an apple than animal products 3 times a day. How often do you hear stuff like that, Laurie?
Oh my goodness. So many different times. I feel mixed emotions about that because doctors are only trained a certain way, right? But of course, I think as a physician, we really need to always be looking to learn and see what's working because it was a patient experience that allowed me to even discover a plant-based diet by accident. And we always need to keep that curiosity, but doctors are so burnt out and we have a limited toolbox. So we should always be trying to add to our toolbox. But today's medicine, and when you're looking at the administrative issues and the complexity of patients, my daughter is in her 3rd year of family medicine residency right now. And what she's seeing is nothing compared to what I was seeing 20 years ago when I was, just coming into medicine as an attending, as a new, freshly minted doctor, right? I sit there and think, man, these poor young kids, and then they're going into a system that's even more burdened by the administration burdens and, see more patients, got to make more money, got sicker patients, access to care, access to care. They're always talking about access to care, but they're never thinking about, okay, what is causing all this? Like, we didn't have this issue 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Why are so many people more sick than they were? And why, it's just like, again, we're just missing, the forest. We're missing the trees for the forest, I guess, or however the saying goes. But it's a really sad. But yes, I hear that often. Doctors are just saying what they hear themselves. Maybe they read a blog or see social media. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
there you are.
Yeah. So do you think when she comes out of medical school and gets out there after a while, she'll come work with you and you'll be the Doctor's Marbas?
Yeah, so she finished medical school 2 years ago. So now she's in her last year of residency. So yes, she's actually going to be moving hopefully to San Diego, and she's already working on getting her ACLM certification, or American College of Lifestyle Medicine certification. And so it'll be a paradox. I love that joke. That was my favorite one. I was like, Emily, when you graduate medical school, I'm saying it's a pair of ducks. She's like, oh my goodness.
A paradox.
Yeah, implant-based paradox.
So I think we have time for 2 more questions, Laurie. And
okay.
Are there studies showing the effects of whole food plant-based diet with preventing dementia? The Sure is what comes to my mind immediately as far as preventing, but not curing.
Right, exactly. And what's interesting with dementia, I'm sure there are some for prevention of dementia, but again, once you have Alzheimer's, there's no cure. But again, it goes back to speaking about, like, for example, a good one would be like osteoporosis. People kind of be like, I have osteoporosis. I'm like, it's unfortunate we don't speak to the prevention of osteoporosis in children. This is a pediatric diagnosis. I think it's the same thing with things like heart disease, dementia. We need to be getting to the younger population and teaching our kids about this, because that's what's going to be preventing it. But I can only tell you.
Yeah. So go way upstream.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. So, but if you're looking to prevent dementia and you don't have dementia, yes, a whole food plant-based diet can certainly help. Now, do I know those particular studies and can cite them for you off the top of my head? No, but the Sure Eyes, I think they go by the Brain Docs now on Instagram, is a phenomenal resource for you.
Yeah, totally. I mean, have you heard? I've also heard from people that Alzheimer's / dementia, they're also looking at that now as almost like type 3 diabetes. Have you heard that?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So you got to think about it. The brain uses 20% of your glucose every single day. It's 20%. It's a 3-pound organ between your ears. It's like amazing. So this is what we call a metabolically active piece of thing going on here, right? It's just so much. So that means there's a really rich blood supply to the brain. And so we know, just like with heart disease, well, if there's supply to the brain is the same idea. So if you suffer from not getting enough blood supply to a heart, it's definitely going to be happening into the brain. And hence why they would call it like a type 3 diabetes, because that also tells you you're probably going to have insulin resistance, less blood supply, you're not being sufficient use of insulin, getting glucose to the brain, lots of different things there. Yeah. So it's a similar idea.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, because it's a question that sometimes people ask, and I'd love to hear your response. What do you say when people say your brain is like 80% fat, and because of that, you need to eat fat to feed your brain?
Oh my goodness.
How do you respond to that?
Okay, answer? So first of all, okay, so if we think
remember, you earlier said there's no such thing as a dumb question.
Right. No. I'm just trying to figure out how to best phrase it. Right. So my brain is always thinking which is, yes, the brain has a lot of fatty tissues in the sense of the nerves and the myelin sheaths and things like that, all these things that are occurring in the brain. But we got to remember, when you eat fat, it doesn't mean the brain takes it in as fuel, right? The brain uses glucose. Now, when we think about ketones, right? So ketones, when people say, I'm going to do a keto diet to get into this state of ketosis, right? So they're utilizing fat as energy. Now, why do we even, let's again go back and ask, why does the body have the ability to do that? Well, it's because we need some way to be in a state of fasting, because back in the day when we didn't have restaurants and food like we have everywhere now, processed foods and any foods, right? The body had to have a way of like, well, today I have food, but tomorrow I might not. So I need to have an ability to use my fat stores to provide supply to this brain that can go and find me some food. Hence why we can go into a ketosis state, right? So just because the brain is made of a lot of fat or has higher fat percentage, I don't even know the percentage of the nerve and the different tissues, because honestly, it doesn't matter. Because what you need to feed this brain is really rich sources of complex carbohydrates, right? So the glucose is what the brain prefers to live and thrive on. And so does the rest of your body. Because if you're in a ketosis state, there's inflammation. You're not meant to be that in state for a long period of time. Hope that helps.
Oh, absolutely. But just to take it a little step farther, my understanding is that the blood-brain barrier, there's only certain kind of fats that can go through that, and they're essentially like the omega-3, the polyunsaturated.
The omega-3s.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So the brain-blood barrier is made there so certain things can't get to the brain to protect it. So you're exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah. We could go on and on and on. But you know what? This is what I prefer to do. Is I prefer to have you back on, right?
Okay.
In a couple months, and kind of we can make this a couple times a year. Let's ask Dr. Laurie.
Sure.
But this has been phenomenal. You are such a wealth of knowledge, and for looking like you're 29, I just it's crazy.
Thank you. I'll pay you later. Venmo you.
But welcome. Well, and congrats on the move out to Southern California from Rifle or near Rifle, Colorado.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, California's been fabulous.
Yeah. And thanks for what you're doing and helping people. You have a deep well of passion, and I so appreciate that we're so mission aligned in so many ways, Laurie. So thank you.
No, thank you for having me. It was a delight as usual.
Yeah. Hey, everybody, have a fantastic weekend. Thanks for joining us today, August 4th, 2023, Friday. And you guys keep it plant strong. Laurie, hit me with a little plant strong fist bump on the way out.
Woohoo!
Yeah.